When I was about 12 years old, I decided that I wanted to be a forensic chemist.
Uh-huh.
And a forensic chemist has turned out to be a toxicologist, but it wasn't called that at that time. They were my training professor was the Oregon State chemist for many, many years, and he trained me as a toxicologist. And then when I got to medical school, I became a PhD of pharmacology and toxicology.
And you taught pharmacology and toxicology in a number of medical schools.
I taught physiology, pharmacology, and toxicology for about 10 medical schools. I was invited to East Africa, Uganda, and Tanzania, where I trained the first doctors in Tanzania.
You're at the University of Georgia,
Ohio. All over the place. I was recruited by the University of London to teach in Africa, and so just like I say, I trained the first doctors there, I was a medical school professor for 25 years. The last 3 years, I was a full-time student while I was a full-time professor.
And that was at the
Osteopathic College in Des Moines, Iowa. And the strange thing about it was that I got my osteopathic degree when I was 54 years old, and I was older than most of the teachers.
That's funny. That's when you started being an individual practicing osteopath.
Yeah. I had got associated with Paul at a town hall meeting.
Yeah, we were at KATU Channel 2's town hall.
Yeah.
And I was in the hot seat. It was just before the vote. It was the week, just 2 days 2 days before the vote in 1998, where we were urging people to vote yes on Measure 67 for medical marijuana and no on referendum Measure 57 to recriminalize marijuana. The legislature in 97 had passed a bill to recriminalize marijuana, and we got 90,000 signatures to stop that from going into effect. A year later, we got another 120,000 to put the marijuana legalization on the ballot. So we went into this town hall. Of course, there was this one side of the studio where people largely in favor of marijuana. On the other side of the studio were people largely against marijuana. Yeah. And you were right in the middle of the crowd. That was against marijuana.
Well, the whole thing there were so many people pro-marijuana, and I was on crutches.
Yeah.
So I had to sit on the other way. And what was the name of that attorney who was running you know who I'm talking about? Jack.
Oh, Jack Schweig. Now that's the one in Hawaii. I can't remember his last name.
Yeah.
But Jack, he was the MC for a number of years.
Yeah, that's right. And so he wanted to know if anybody on the other side wanted to speak. And so I raised my hand.
Yeah.
And I said,
I think everybody around you thought you were about to launch into something about how terrible marijuana is.
And I says, marijuana has been used for 5,000 years as medicine and has never killed anybody. And I can see this Jack
These people start to scoot away from you. They kind of moved around. But I noted it, and as soon as that show was over, I came and invited you to co-host this show. We started this show in 1996, in late 1996. And then you came on at about show number 75 or 80.
Something like that, yeah.
And we have some clips of some of these earlier shows we're going to play here a little bit later.
With Paul Loney.
Yeah, we had Paul Loney on as a guest host, and he stayed on till about show 125 or so.
Yeah.
Then when we switched over from this private studio that Lanny Swerdlow had done the first 120 shows, you moved over to when we started to record shows here as well.
You're right.
And you stayed at it for quite a while.
Well, the first applications that I wrote were in your homes.
Yeah.
For about 3 different homes?
Yeah.
Three or four different homes?
What happened is that people started coming to the TV show before the show to get you to sign their papers, and it just started to be overwhelming in terms of the people coming just before the show, and so I decided to move it over to my home for a while, and that became, my kids were young then, they're young adults now, but I roll around on the floor and pick up all the food scraps and toys and stuff, but Eventually, we opened an office on Broadway and 45th, and we outgrew that office the day we opened it. It was too small, and so we kept going. And